Welcome to Healing Rain. My name is Sue Detweiler, your host, and my goal is to help you live with more passion, love with more purpose, and lead an overcoming life. Well, today on Healing Rain, we are talking with JT Jester and his mom, Chris, and both of them have really been on a healing journey because of the health challenges that JT was born with. But before JT and Chris come on Healing Rain, I just want to say to you, we love hearing testimonies from you. So if you want to send a testimony, it's very easy to do that and share your story with others. Just reach out. You can, in your subject line of an email, put testimony and just send that to info@suedatweiler.com. Well, today on Healing Rain, I'm happy to have JT and his mother, Chris. Welcome on Healing Rain. Glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you.
I love having a mother and a son together, and you guys have walked through a healing journey together. And so, JT, can you start? What's it been like for you in your healing journey?
Yeah. So, as you know, a little bit about my story is I was born with a medical complication called vectoral syndrome, and vectoral syndrome would be a new way of life for me and my family. But along this journey, there was so much healing, physically, mentally, and emotionally. With the things that we would go through and the things that they would go through, being a caretaker for me and being my advocate. And so along the journey with vectoral syndrome, my challenges that I was born with were what they call tracheoesophageal fistulas, and perforated anus, and then along those lines, tethered spinal cord, and many other complications with the GI system. So at birth,
Wow.
I had a colostomy bag for the first few years of my life, and the you know as we got older and grew, more things would come about. But thanks to my loving parents and amazing doctors and the good Lord, we've been able to do amazing. And the healing journey part of it has been uh, thanks to the good Lord, our relationship. I was blessed with that relationship uh, early on because of my parents, and just continued to grow in our faith and myself and my own faith too.
Well, I'm just amazed, and I'm a mother of many, so I'm thinking about what that would have been like for you as parents when
Mhm.
your baby's born that you've expected, and then you've got multiple birth defects that you're dealing with. So what was that like for you? I mean, JT's not going to remember this,
Yeah.
he was a
Oh.
baby, but what was that like for you to realize that you had a challenge in parenting this newborn?
So when JT was born, we thought we had everything was going to be fine, and he was our first, so we had no idea what to really expect. But then as the day unfolded and doctors would enter the room, they knew something was wrong. They didn't know what was wrong. So they would bring in a heart specialist, and they'd bring in a GI doc, and they kept bringing in different doctors. So we knew something was going on as new parents, but we weren't really sure. We thought maybe this is a little bit normal too. So after JT's birth, and they took him to the NICU, it was a long day, and we didn't know all the details. And so my husband went with the doctors and the baby, and he did find out the details, but thought he'd let me rest. It was late at night, and he'd come back in the morning to tell me. So when the surgeon came in to have me sign some papers, I thought the surgeon had the wrong room. So I kind of instructed him that he had the wrong room, and he told me, no, he did not. And then my husband came in to tell him that I didn't know the details yet. So as the details unfolded, I have to say there was some sort of peace in that,
Mm.
some understanding about what happened the day before. And my husband had gone home and opened his Bible, and he just opened up to how God was calling all the children in Mark to
Mm.
and to heal. And that started our close more. We were always in our faith very close to our Heavenly Father, but this really pulled us together on day 2 of JT's life. And from that point forward, our walk became closer and closer, but we also early on saw how lives were being touched through JT. And we were now in a whole new community of people.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how God works, as you know, and me being born with some challenges allowed for opportunities to teach, others. And I think of it as all the time as the story of like my parents, how we would go to Long Island. We were from Detroit, but we'd go to Long Island Jewish Medical Center. We'd go to Cincinnati Children's. And those were times that my parents were missionaries. They were in a Ronald McDonald house for, months at a time. And they would be spending that time being able to share the stories of the God and how he's worked in our lives and how he can work in theirs. And so, it's amazing how God works. But the healing side of things too, we've been with these challenges, I always like to look at it as like, we all fall in life, and when we fall, we have to know how to get back up, and so another part of that is like how we share our stories, and being able to share stories is so important to that healing process. And we're all going to fall. We're all going to have that time in our life that it's like, we can't share about this because it's, just too deep, too hard. But when it comes down to it, what I have learned is how important it is to share our stories. And that's where, along my journey, I've been able to write my first book, Untether. And Untether has been a journey in itself of me learning about the medical stuff, which is healing, and being able to put it in words. And I think for my parents too. And then my newest book, No Bad Days, which is all about healing. And it's because it brings in all these incredible people that can share just amazing stories of adversities that I can only imagine what they went through. It's just incredible to see how they have gotten through their biggest challenges and feats in life.
Yeah, well, I know. I love the title of your newest one, The No Bad Days, and the undertitle is about joy, right?
Yes.
So, what's the second part of the title? It's joy
Yeah, it's
and
how to find joy in any circumstance.
And
yeah.
also the No Bad Days is actually another story of how that came about.
Yeah.
You want to?
So my dad came into my hospital room, and he came to my bedside and he said, JT, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. And I turned to him at 7 years old and I said, Dad, it's okay. There are no bad days. There are only hard days, and we get through those. And that became a life motto for our family, and so that's how the book got its name. But
Oh,
it's true.
that's beautiful. And I remember those times of having children, and all of a sudden you hear God's voice through your child. I can imagine that's how it felt for your dad.
Yeah.
It definitely, there were many of those types of stories, fortunately, because it was more teachable moments. I remember another moment where JT was getting an IV, and sometimes they call it a hard start, where you put the needle in, and finally JT, he had tears in his eyes, and the nurse looked at him and said, "You must just be so afraid." And he said, no, Jesus tells me not to be afraid. He goes, this just plain hurts. So yeah, so through his walk, he was constantly, JT was constantly teaching us as parents and those around him, um, how Jesus was walking with him this whole journey, and still is. JT's
Yeah.
26 now, and he's still medically, there's things that go on. So but I guess God is still using him.
Oh, well, I mean, the reality is, JT, you're just beginning,
Yeah.
And I hear you're quite adventuresome. I have not climbed a mountain like you have. I've written a book, Women Who Move Mountains, but you
I
actually
love
climbed mountains. So
it.
tell me about that, because that's an adventurous side of you.
Yeah, so I think that goes back to the healing again. For me, I had this medical stuff that we haven't talked too deep about, but it's been challenges that I've been had to face. But then there's a whole education front of me too that I struggled with education, severe dyslexia and short-term memory loss, and those were very challenging days too, because I was taken out of school so much for my medical, and then trying to catch up to what other kids are doing was very hard for me. And so um there was a time where uh we always say how there's naysayers in life, and an individual said, JT, you won't be able to read, or you won't be able to write. And there's other incidences where it was like, JT, physically you won't be able to reach this potential. Well, what I found is that nature has been my biggest healing factor, and being able to go into nature and do these adventures allows me to connect with God and forget about the naysayers in life, and to push forward and just enjoy life. And so, like you said, uh, your amazing book, Women Moving Mountains, and with me climbing mountains, mountains have been a huge part of my life, and just enjoying uh, the challenges that they give you, and challenges to are challenges are good. Challenges, even in a you know challenges that we confront, and we
Mhm.
fall, or we have a hard time with, those teach us so much in life. And that's the
Mhm.
same thing by pushing myself in the mountains and other areas of adventure. I have learned so much.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I know that you're talking about, we haven't quite mentioned it, but there's a scripture that uh, says, I fellowship with Jesus in suffering, so that I'm able to really comprehend his resurrection. There's a place on earth in which there's suffering that we go through. But we don't have to be alone with that. We can fellowship with him in the suffering. And I think it's part of how he conforms us to his image, how we become more and more like him on this earth. Um, and I know I told someone that's been on my healing team I've gone through different difficulties in my life physically. And this person knows me very well. And I told her, well, it's time for me to write a book on healing. And she said, do you mean you're going to write a book on suffering? And I just laughed and laughed and laughed, because I knew what she was talking about. But, nobody wants to read about a book on suffering. But I think part of how you find your deepest joy is
Mhm.
when you go through the suffering, but you're not going through it alone. You're journeying together with him. You're fellowshipping with him. He's transforming your character. He's building joy on the inside of you that also helps the healing process. Um, but do you want to reflect on that? That aspect of, because I know what you're saying. You're not saying that there's no suffering in life. you're saying that in the midst of the suffering, God's been good. Is that
Yeah,
right? Or do you want to talk
that
about
is.
that?
No, you're so right. I mean, if you have anything about touch too, but
Yeah.
um, you know, in those suffering moments is when you really come to grips with understanding so much more about yourself and the people around you. You talk about um, your healing team, and I love that. And but the way I have always looked at it is my tribe. You know,
Oh, I
finding your
like
tribe.
that.
And so, but it's true. It's you know, your tribe is so crucial. You know, when you fall or when you learn to fall, there's this time that
Yeah.
I had a ski coach of mine, and this ski coach of mine, uh, you know, taught me. He said, you know, the first day I met with him, I'd been skiing for years, and he said, JT, today we're going to learn to fall. And I was like, this is counterintuitive to skiing. Like I want to learn how to ski better and faster. So we're going up the chairlift, and he says, you know, JT, you're going to follow after me. So when we get up there, you're going to fall to the left, you're going to fall to the right, you're going to fall center. And so we get up there, get to the edge of the mountain, and he's doing it. And I start to follow him, and my falling is not as elegant as his falling. And so we continue doing this throughout the day. And what I realize is that he wasn't, you know, he was there teaching me how to fall properly, because knowing when you're going to fall and how to prevent it, and when you do fall in a race course, how to get back up and how to keep going,
Uh-huh.
and or how to prevent injury.
Yeah.
But another really valuable lesson was that
Uh-huh.
that's not just how it works on the ski slopes. That works is how it works in life.
Uh-huh.
And you know, we have to get back up. But he and my parents and God, first and foremost, were a part of that team, that tribe.
Yeah.
And building that tribe is so important. And I
And
think that my mom can speak on tribe so strongly with the doctors and everything that we have come across.
yeah, and we have always said you'd never want this, a birth defect like this for anyone. Uh, but we've come to a point, and this came on early on too, that it was okay that it happened to our family. My husband and I have a very strong
Mhm.
relationship and marriage, and we have a wonderful family that is able to help us emotionally also. But in turn, we've learned so much. We've learned so much
Mhm.
about the medical field. JT
Mhm.
syndrome is very rare. We have found a community with those other families,
Mhm.
and to this day we're still involved. And like JT said about the Ronald McDonald houses, parents had so
Mhm.
much in common. We had sick kids; they were in the hospital. We as parents had a lot of time on our hands. So nighttime is really a wonderful time where we would communicate and share our stories and share about our faith and be able to talk about how our Heavenly Father was helping us through this in hopes that they would find comfort too. And to this day now, JT is helping some of those families. JT has
Mhm.
medical supplies he uses every day, and they're not covered by insurance. But
Yeah.
JT felt a calling to start a foundation to raise money through the challenges in which you were speaking of, to help
Mhm.
those families. So
Yeah.
the tribe keeps growing, and hopefully
Mhm.
we're strengthening that tribe for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I can see how, because that's also an unspoken need, is the amount of the financial need
Yeah.
that you've had as a family. You know, all of the best medical treatment costs money. You know, these are good doctors and
Yeah.
nurses and hospitals, and I love that you started a foundation to help others. Yeah.
So you'll love this. The foundation, you know, does everything through adventure. And so
Oh, I love it. I
so
do.
so we started this the JT Masta Foundation, and the foundation was established, I guess, just before COVID, basically. And so, unfortunately, but fortunately, we were able to still kick it off. But we had to rethink some things. Instead of doing 5Ks and different things where people can come participate, we ended up saying, okay, well, let's set a goal. Let's do an event and set a goal. So we did this event called 29,029, and it's a climb. And so you go 29,029 is the elevation of Mount Everest. And so we went to a
Wow.
ski resort here in the US and would climb up the mountain and take the chairlift down. And we did it 13 times in 36 hours to raise money. Our goal was $29,029, and we were able to, through social media, surpass that. And so the foundation, like my mom said, is established to help children with medical supplies, with the similar medical challenges that I've had, and then also on the education front and dyslexia, as well as their faith journey too. We participate with supporting Young Life, a Christian
Good, good.
foundation and stuff. So it's been a real fun journey to be able to uh, give back in that way.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love the fact that dyslexia is one of those things where you have trouble reading and writing, and then it's just like God, there you are, you write a book. And
Yeah,
not just
a
one,
little,
but two.
a
You know,
little
it's
ironic.
yeah, I mean that's how God is. I struggled with a lisp in school. If you listen, you can probably still hear it. I never graduated, in fact. Every year I would go to speech therapy and never quite, get it. And the letter that I struggled with is the letter of my name. So I would feel that self-consciousness and sometimes cover my mouth and sometimes boys would tease me. They were probably really flirting with me, that sort of thing would happen. But, one of the things that God called me to was to speak. And how often, the very area that you're called to, there's these challenges that you have to overcome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
exactly. And like we keep speaking of God and our healing process, but also, laughter. Um,
Yes, good.
so when JT first called home for his first book, he was in college and called home. His dad said,
my
"You."
dad. I said, Dad, I really want to write a book. And he said, well, JT, I hope you have a lot of pictures.
That's so funny.
And we were like, really? Come on. And he pulled it off. He did his first book and now his second. So you're right, God does work in the funnest of ways as well.
Yes.
So
Mm.
lots of joy and laughter has been healing. In
Healing.
fact, your name,
Yeah,
JT
yeah.
as a nickname,
So
pen name.
my JT Jester is a name that I guess you'd call it our pen name. And so JT Jester came from a time where I, I was in the hospital and there was, then I would come out of surgery and the nurses would say, JT always wakes up with a smile, always is cracking jokes. And then came around this book, and this book was called The Jester Who Lost His Jingle. And so from from day from day one of this journey, we've always had a lot of laughter and a lot of joy to get through those hard times. But Jester has stuck around as one of my nicknames, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, the joy of the Lord is your strength. There's no doubt about it. And a cheerful heart is good medicine. There's no doubt
Yes.
about that.
Yeah.
And how we think about things, how we process them, because hardships come, but how we think about it, what we meditate on, we magnify. So Talk about some of the scriptures that, became a rhema word to you, that it was a verse or a
Yeah,
chapter, something that just went, that's mine. What
totally.
has that been like for you?
So, for me, I think the messages, that come from the Bible, I can hold on to like the story, and
Mhm.
that is where I, am able to understand and learn. And but for me, specific scripture with my short-term memory and with my challenges with reading and stuff, they still, it's still a struggle. It's still a challenge. And so I always, I can get frustrated and I can get upset about the fact that I can't memorize a verse from the Bible very well. And there might, be a time where I'm scrolling through the Bible trying to find something, and I am having the hardest times. But that's where that tribe comes in, and I've been blessed because of a lot of people in my life, but one person in particular in the last couple of years, I, I guess you'd call him, he's similar age of me, and so with that, it's been a blessing because it's someone that I can go and talk to and rely on, and also sit down and have a Bible study, because I was the one that didn't want to go to a youth group Bible study, because when I sat down there, and they're going around the room, and you might have to read something, or you might have to recite
Memorize.
something and memorize,
Mhm.
and that was something that I couldn't do. And so
Mhm.
it's important for all of us, I think, to realize that, even the littlest of things like reading the Bible, it can be a challenge for others. And for me, the biggest blessing has been, this individual, this dear friend of mine, because he understands and he spends that time with me to sit down and go through things and for me to ask questions. And so that's been a huge part of my life, most recently, of learning even more, and continuing that journey.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you're saying, that it's the story that stayed with you. It's the story of Jesus that stayed with you. And you think about how Jesus taught. He taught with story. He taught with parables.
Yeah.
Um, and I love the friendship element too. And you're right. There's so many things that we struggle with that people don't even have any idea.
Right.
So,
Mhm. yeah.
Right. So Sunday school, when you would be learning all the books of the Bible, or you would be memorizing John 3:16, you know, that wasn't a lot, that did not bring a lot of joy to JT.
yeah.
That brought a lot of stress on Sunday, and then during the week for school. And so JT found he would go to camps, Christian vacation Bible schools, and
Spring
in
Hill
Spring
Camp.
Hill Camp, which is a, a camp locally in Michigan, and they were outdoor adventure kind of camps where they would always bring in the trust factor while you're on the um,
Rock wall, or
yeah, rock
your
wall, and then they bring in how we're to trust Jesus, and those were the stories that would unfold for him as a child growing up, and that is where he really did a lot of his learning. Um,
it's I've never really thought of this, but like, I think that the time that, I would go to those camps and you'd be surrounded by adventure, and then how they would teach us, through adventure, scripture and the Bible, is really unique because of my other way of looking at it, how adventure was my time to get away from the naysayers and just focus
Mm.
on me, myself, and like my relationship with the Lord. That being different, like in my adventure, it was always, just that prayer, the tranquility of being in Mother Nature, and stuff as well. So
And
Mhm.
these climbing mountains and such, none of them had just been a breeze. There's always been a hiccup along the way, and mostly revolving around his health issues. And so again, JT has shared with us after the fact of what was going on in his mind. And so when he reaches that goal, like the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, an overwhelming, you can explain the feeling better than I can, but
Yeah.
again, how God walked every single step.
It's really cool. I'll share with you a quick story here of Kilimanjaro. When I chose to do Kilimanjaro, it was the dear friend of mine, Ladislav, who taught me a lot about skiing. He said, "GT, when you graduate college, what is one adventure you want to do?" And I said, "I want to climb a mountain with you." And so we set out to do Kilimanjaro. And so we spent many months training, and we had to figure out medically how we would do this, because my medical treatment I do every day. I do a bowel management program every day because I've no motility from top of my esophagus all the way down still. So I catheterize myself through my belly button, and I put 500 cc's of a glorified enema in there, and that irrigates my lower GI. And so on the mountain, we had to figure out how to do this, and we did. It wasn't pretty, but we figured it out. And so
a lot of things in life are not pretty.
Right.
So our goal was to do Kilimanjaro summit on the 4th day. And the reason, because we had to bring X amount of medical supplies, and we had to get up and off the mountain as soon as possible.
And normally, how many days does it take?
Normal is 6 to 7 days is the average pace up Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
So we pushed hard for the first several days, and on that 4th day, the night before, I did my medical treatment, and it didn't go as planned. But we got through it, and we woke up the next morning and started up the mountain. And we got to a point where there was glaciers, and these glaciers were not supposed to be there at this time of year. And so we actually had to cross over the glaciers with ice tools. And once we got across, our guide said, "There's no turning around." And so we continued up the mountain. Now we're doing this route called Umbe route, which is a single track. We were the only people on it, basically, had to pull special permits and stuff. But as we continued up, I noticed I started to feel what I call a hot stomach. And so from there, I ended up realizing this hot stomach was turning into a real problem. I had a bug and was sick. And so that sickness turned into altitude sickness because of how much it was dehydrating me.
Sure.
And stuff. And so upon getting to this point of like where we could almost see the Kilimanjaro summit sign, the guide said, "JT, let me take your backpack." And I wanted to finish it with my backpack on. And so he kept saying, "No, GT, let me take it." And so I ended up giving him my backpack. Well, reaching the summit was this unbelievable spiritual moment of just the emotions that came over me, crying and joy, and like, wow, this was an actual accomplishment that we were able to do. Was so cool. But what I realized, me, sometimes I can be a little bit stubborn in the way that I just want to be able to do it with all my will. But I had to give up that backpack, and I realized that, you know what, it's like what we need to do with God is we need to give up some things to be able to have a stronger relationship and stronger support system going up that mountain that we're climbing every day.
Oh, that is so powerful. And I mean, that is an accomplishment. You're right. You've got a good friend that said, "Hey, you're going to finish college," which is a huge feat. What's your next adventure? So let me be a friend like that to you. In closing, what do you think some of your next adventures will be? What are on your list?
Yeah. So I think right now, my biggest adventure is working on the foundation and trying to build that and create awesome growth with that, and be able to help more families and students and patients. And with that, I have chosen to do a few different events coming up here. 61 miles of paddleboarding. That will be a fundraiser. And
Stand up paddleboard.
Yeah.
In the
Great
lakes
Lakes
here.
here. And then we're also doing this climb called Rim to Rim, and going from one side of the Grand Canyon to the other and back. So
Wow.
those are some adventures that are next on the list here. But every day is an adventure.
Yeah.
We
And
like to have fun.
Well,
Yeah.
and as a mom, you know that early on I had to let go of my backpack. I had to give that over the doctors at one point, and my worries and cares, and even now, because you know, his adventures, like he said, he has the medical piece he always has to put into all this, and it's I have a lot of trust in God that he's carrying him.
Yeah, in so many ways, as a mom, you've had to put him on the altar, so to speak, and just say, God, he's a gift from you.
Yes.
Depend upon you.
Yes, and the book writing and
Yeah.
the foundation and these wonderful opportunities with you. He came to us as parents after college, getting the degree, getting a job, and told us how he was going to quit his job because he felt the Lord was calling him to do more of this work. And it's been this very rewarding with the second book.
Yeah, so the new book is all about joy and how individuals in life have found joy in their hardest of times. And so I've been able to start a podcast and YouTube channel that it also correlates with the book, and an individual sharing their story. And so I think one of the most rewarding things is being able to hear how other people, what their story is, what their journey is in life. And so it's been fun.
Well, it sure has been, and you are an inspiration. And Healing Rain community, as I'm hearing this story, I know that you have been encouraged, that God's a healer. And, sometimes there's a journey involved. Sometimes there's a process involved. But whenever there's a process, you're learning more about God, and you are growing closer to Him. And the joy of the Lord is your strength.